Hi everyone. Um, Welcome to another video. Sorry for the late upload. I've been on vacation, so I came back just a few days ago. But today we're going to be talking about The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. I'm using the microphone of my headphones. Hopefully that makes the audio better because I know that there was a bit of issue with the volume in my last video, but um, The Old Man and the Sea is a book by Ernest Hemingway. It follows a old fisherman named Santiago who fishes on the Gulf Stream. I believe that Hemingway wrote it based on his experiences when he lived in Cuba, if I'm not mistaken. But the story follows Santiago, who has been unlucky in fishing for the past 3 weeks. He hasn't gotten any fish. He typically fishes with a young boy who really sees him as like a parental figure. This is a young boy who he's taught how to fish since he was 5, and it's a young boy who really loves him. He really loves the young boy. They have like a father-son relationship, and the book, I think the beginning of this video is just going to be a little spoiler-free review, or just, I guess, discussion, but then I'll talk about the actual plot and how that relates to my takeaways from the story. So I guess I'll put a timestamp somewhere in the caption or here on where the spoilers start, but for now this is spoiler free. I think overall this is a book about humanity. It follows Santiago as he goes off into the sea and his journey as he embarks on, sailing through the waters, what he reflects on in his life, how he talks to the animals and the fish that he comes across. There's a really big theme, to me personally, in this story about humanizing other living creatures and not viewing humans as, superior or dominating, and that there's actual pity or hardship. There's a sadness that comes in being able to kill other animals, being so calculated and intelligent that we have this advantage. There's a sadness to that. It's not necessarily something that's seen as powerful or something that's seen as a really amazing conquest. It's a double-edged sword, and I think that is reflected in the story. But yeah, that's kind of what the story follows. It follows Santiago and his journeys in the sea and the humanity around him, both in the living, and other animals, but also with the boy. And they have it's very sweet, just like genuine and very sweet and heartfelt. And it does reflect, just a true human connection that you have with someone and a very genuine fondness for another person. And though Santiago is financially maybe not rich, there are a lot of experiences, and his mindset, the way he reflects and thinks about things, shows a true richness in his personhood and in his life. So, with that being said, now I'll actually talk about the spoilers of this story and go into what happens. So Santiago, he goes out to sea, and he catches like a tuna at first, a small fish. And then he talks about, seeing the sea, and he talks about seeing the water and how the sun reflects from the water. And a lot of people often get cataracts in their eyes and they go blind, but he's able to retain his vision. And I think there's a dichotomy, or maybe not dichotomy, there's a true contrast in this story that's reflected. I see a very big juxtaposition, I guess, maybe, between the wealth that Santiago has as a person versus the wealth he has financially. And then, he's old, and in his body he can see sunspots on his skin. He knows that he's gotten older because his skin has started to wrinkle, and it looks like I think there's a excerpt that talks about how his skin looks like leather because it's been so tanned from the sun. but his eyes are vibrant and they're bright and they're youthful. His eyes haven't changed. Santiago, ends up not catching, well, we'll get to that, but he's out at sea and he ends up putting like 4 lines out into the ocean, and one of his lines takes and he can tell it's a really big fish. And we don't see the fish emerge until I think a few days later, but he follows this fish, or he's not even driving the boat. The fish is leading the boat because it's this massive fish, and he doesn't know how big it is at first, but the fish is it ends up surfacing towards, I guess, maybe 3/4 into the book, and it's this gorgeous fish. It has lavender stripes, and it sparkles blue and purple in the sun, and it's this grand fish, and he ends up killing it. But it takes great strength. It nearly kills him too. He has had injuries all throughout this process of trying to catch this fish. His back is hurting, his fingertips have been cut, and we see that as he's bringing the fish home, and he wants the fish because it's going to make him a lot of money. It's a massive fish. He can sell it for a lot, but also I think there's part of it that's the recognition or respect from other fishermen, and being kind of acknowledged in this community, and almost like it seems like it's impossible because he is an older guy, and he was able to catch this massive fish, and as he's driving, or sailing I should say, towards home, sharks start swarming his boat, and he's able to kill them, he's able to fight them off, but they take a lot of the fish with them, and he is left with, I think, the head of the fish, and there's a few parts of it left, but the best part that he could have sold is gone, and he just says, I've ruined you, and I've ruined me. He feels so much, I think, regret for killing this fish, because it wasn't even fruitful in the end. He couldn't get anything from it in a way, because the sharks ate the most valuable parts. They took the parts that he was going to sell, or the parts that he would have eaten himself, and he's left with just the remnants. And when he finally gets to the shore, he goes into his shack and he goes to sleep. And the young boy sees him and looks at his fingertips and starts crying, because he can tell that he's been heavily wounded from his time at sea, and he's been gone for days. There were Coast Guards looking for him with planes. People were worried about him, and he sleeps for several days, and then he finally awakes to a hot cup of coffee. And people, other people are looking at the carcass of the fish, and like, it was an 18-foot fish. It was a fish that was huge, But I don't think Santiago really, he doesn't revel in the conquest the way maybe he thought he would have, because ultimately it ended up resulting in, being attacked by sharks. It wasn't fruitful. It didn't end up the way he wanted it to. But that's kind of the summary of the book. But now I'm going to talk about the takeaways I had from it. So I think one of the big things in this story is it does talk about a true brotherhood with nature. This idea that other living things, they are our equals and they are our siblings, and we should treat them with respect and treat them with kindness. There's a lot of compassion shown in this book. There's an excerpt, I think on page 29, where Santiago talks about how his heart hurts for the delicate birds that try and fish in these harsh waters, because he knows that these birds, these delicate birds, apart from, you know, the birds of prey that are able to sustain this lifestyle and are able to, you know, dominate the sea, these delicate birds, they're no feat for the harshness of the waves. They're no feat for the cruelty of the water. And he talks about the sea, how there's some people who refer to it la mer or la mer, which is the masculine, and there's some people that view it as a conquest, but he views the sea as something that gives, and when the sea acts out in cruelty, he views it as a woman, and, you know, that women go kind of crazy when the moon hits, something like that. He feeds into the binary a bit more than I do, and I think that's just Hemingway, maybe also a reflection of the main talking points of the time. I still think it's a beautiful excerpt, and he talks about sea turtles and how, you know, he always feels sad for when a sea turtle is hunted, hurt, or maybe it's just a regular turtle. He talks about like the way people hunt them down. He talks about a lot of different animals, creatures, but he talks about them with love, and there's a true, you know, respect that's just reflected throughout the story. And I think that when you are working in a field, in an industry, in a community that has such close proximity to natural resources, to the water, to the earth, when you're not in this like very industrialized city or or living in a culture that has this very distant view of nature as something to just take from, that's something, you know, natural resources, minerals that we use for oil, that we use for building, and that we're far from nature. It's really hard to humanize nature when you're in an industrial area, and when you subscribe to, I think, very like capitalist, industrialist ideas. But with Santiago, there's a true love for nature and for the sea, and he sees himself, as he should, as nature himself. You know, he doesn't see it as something apart from himself. We often talk about nature as though it's at an arm's length, that there's humans and we have to respect nature, but we have to say that we have to respect nature is to say that we have to respect ourselves, because we are mammals. We are part of the ecosystem. We are not different from it. There is a very intertwined from the moment that, you know, we came to the planet, from the moment we evolved, if you subscribe to that, I personally do, or from the moment of Adam and Eve, whatever it is that you choose to believe, we have always been part of the ecosystem. We have always been part of nature. It's not something that's different from ourselves. And I love that that's something that is shown in this story, that we are nature. You know, Santiago, he talks about how humans have the ability to dominate, but there's still this discussion about how we are, he refers to living creatures as like his siblings. He refers to the fish in the sea as his siblings. And I think that's the right mentality to have, because otherwise, if we think that we are different from nature, and if we put a distance between ourselves and the sea and the sky and animals, then it allows us to exploit it without remorse, and then the ramifications of that exploitation, we can chalk it up to other reasons and not put ourselves at the center of it. So I really thought that was a great aspect of it. And then another thing I took away from the story was maybe knowing when to let go. I didn't want to read too many reviews or plot summaries or takeaways from the story from other people, because I didn't want that to influence my thinking points, but I did briefly look a little bit. And what I did see was that this was a story about resilience and a story about persistence. And while I do see that, to me it's a story about knowing when to let go. Because I think that Santiago and the fish would have been better off if he let the fish be free. I don't think he should have killed the fish, because the fish was, I think the fish was meant to remain in the ocean. There's nothing that really comes from him killing the fish that benefits him. He's attacked by sharks. He suffers great physical pains trying to kill the fish, great physical pains trying to kill the sharks, and when he gets home, he's exhausted. And I just think that knowing when to let go, and knowing that you don't have to own things of beauty, you don't have to own things that could provide you riches or acknowledgments, knowing when to walk away, I think is a greater strength than being so persistent that it puts your life at risk. And that's my personal philosophy. I know there are people out there that think that it's a true sign of strength to, push yourself to the very brink, to your breaking point, in order to get something. And if people want to think that way, that's, their prerogative. They can choose to do so. But me personally, I just don't think that there's true, I just don't know if it's ever worth it. I think if something takes that much effort to control, to cage, to kill, then maybe it should just be something that you admire from afar and not interfere with. And I guess I don't feel that way about every single instance always, but generally speaking, I don't think that we should interfere as much as we do. And maybe that's a weakness on my part. Maybe I don't have the right approach. Maybe as I get older, I'll think differently. But for right now, that's how I feel. Yeah, this was kind of a rambly video, sorry. I just think that this is a wonderful story about humanity, about an appreciation for other living creatures, and that it's a story about a love of nature and having a good heart, good intentions, and when to let go. I would recommend that everyone reads this. I have it here. I wasn't really holding it up, I realized, but this is it right here. This is the quote about the delicate birds. He was sorry for the birds, especially the small, delicate, dark terns that were always flying and looking and almost never finding, and he thought, the birds have a harder life than we do, except for the robber birds and the heavy, strong ones. Why did they make birds so delicate and fine as those sea swallows when the ocean can be so cruel? She is kind and very beautiful, but she can be so cruel, and it comes so suddenly, and such birds that fly, dipping and hunting, with their small sad voices are made too delicately for the sea. I think that shows a true compassion, right? A true looking out for other living creatures and feeling, a kindness for them, considering their livelihoods. So that's my review, discussion about Ernest Hemingway's The Old Man and the Sea. Currently reading To the Lighthouse by Virginia Woolf, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. It's proving to be a much better book than I thought it was initially. It took me like 30 pages to get into it, just because the writing style is so different, but it might be one of my favorite books I've ever read. It's very relatable, but very beautiful, and I don't want to say too much about it because I'll save that for the next video. But I hope everybody has a great day, and even better tomorrow, and remember to be kind to yourself and others. And in the comments, I'd love to hear other people's thoughts about this story if they've read it, what were their takeaways, and whether they agree or disagree with what I've said. Hopefully the audio was also better today. Bye.